it's me, lucky bastard. Shh.
Got him. I'm back at it again with another meta level build showcase. This is part 2 of the intelligence meta video. In part 1 I explain my build in great detail, so if you want to know how the heck I'm dealing this much damage with my Moonlight Greatsword, then check out part 1. The link is in the description. And bam, almost one shot. I'm sure it would have been if I actually hit him with the blade. So yeah, this video is less about explaining the build and more about just showcasing some really nice invasions I had with it, and overall just embracing the fun of the game with a nice build. I'm very soon going to follow up with the Dex showcase, so if you don't want to miss that one, and also if you want to help the channel grow, then please subscribe. I'm doing my best to make entertaining and maybe a little informative Elden Ring videos, sometimes mix it up with some Dark Souls or other funny games that fit the theme of the channel. And I upload 2 short videos daily and do live streams. We just hit 400 subscribers, but it's still a long way to getting monetized. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's get to some exquisite gameplay. I'm fighting those 2 guys. One of them has a moon veil, the other one has a Moke Spear. And now I got this guy in 1-hit range with a dagger, and there we go. Dagger him. And the other guy just thrusting with his heavy spear is open for a backstab, and I get him with the Glintstone Crease thrust attack follow-up. Oh yeah, mage builds are so unbalanced. Next up we have a guy who tries to shoot me from the branch with his char cannon, but it's just too slow, and so instead he just shoots me in the face while I'm standing in front of him. Twice. But for sure this won't happen a 3rd time. No. And he also goes down to almost no HP. I'm trying to just take the last hit with the dagger. But he seems a little laggy and it's not easy to catch him, but there we go. I caught his back instead. In this clip we see the absolute supremacy of the Glintstone Crease. Look at this damage. He is absolutely panicking right now and chooses the quickest way out. Those actually were 2 mages. And in this clip I'm again fighting against 2 mages. Or at least this guy looks like a mage. He's rather like a blood mage or whatever, I don't know. And I got him down to almost 1 hit, and I get this hit in, but he decides to rather take himself out. To be honest, I'm fine with that. So I heal back up, and now it's time for the other guy. You see, that's one thing I don't like about those close combat sorceries, because if you don't have the poise to really cast them, somebody with just a fast, small weapon like a curved sword can just interrupt your cast. If you swung an actual great sword, or ultra great sword, or colossal sword, you would not be interrupted like that because of hyper armor. The guys in this invasion are in the shaded castle. For some reason I kept spawning in the Altus Plateau somewhere close to the windmill village, and I used all my bloody phantom fingers in order to just at the last one spawn in the shaded castle. But finally I managed to spawn right next to them, and this guy seems a little laggy, but I think that should have been a very anticlimactic death blow, and now I'm struggling to reach world's most inaccessible ladder. What did Miyazaki think about that? Imagine a person in a wheelchair trying to go up there. Anyway, it was unnecessary because the guy is already jumping down behind me. So yeah, now he gets a little beating. He's by far not as laggy as his friend, and he just takes 3 hits, and that's it. And now for everyone's favorite part of the video, where I'm fighting a max level guy who's trying to protect an AFK host. This sounds fun, doesn't it? Even though he's out-leveling me by a factor of 5, he still cannot just trade with the Dark Moon Greatsword R2. He has to resort to some really cheap moves, like Placidusac's Ruin, which starts off with a lightning shockwave. But even that wasn't enough to save his host. He kind of forced me to attack him. I would have rather fought the max level guy first. He's actually almost max level, 710 out of 713. Next up we see some professional gankers. They're just hosting there in an early game region to prey on unsuspecting invaders. Suddenly a guy with Moke Spear jumps from behind the corner, and they're obviously also summoning blues to make it a 3v1 all the time. But not this time, guys. You've been invaded by a lucky bastard. And you people know what that means. If you don't know what it means, you're about to see it. It means that I'm going to use their thirstiness against them. He's been running after me for quite a while, depleting all his stamina, still using his great shield because he's used to that, but bad idea. You're getting guard broken and riposted. And this guy, he thinks he can just spam Moke Spear just like that, but no, not against the lucky bastard. Obviously, even I can't always be lucky. And luck is also not a real replacement for skill, at least not a reliable one. But hey, sometimes you just need to be unlucky for a moment and then use your luck to clutch it out anyway. Like that, I just got hit down pretty low. But I have faith in my luck that they won't hit me with some projectile while I'm not looking. See, he missed by a mile. Some people say that you need some skill in order to get lucky. And to that I can only say maybe. But I was born a lucky bastard. Usually just thought it's a funny moment to say that because I missed that guy, but at the same time the other finger just returned to his world. And I'll see what I'm doing to the host. He was just casually strolling through the mud, not really paying attention to anything around him. This should be rule number one. If you're playing with your friend and you're getting invaded, and he has never been invaded before, or he's a noob, then you need to tell him, always keep one eye on the invader. Never feel safe, because otherwise if you just hit some enemies, maybe he jumps behind you and uses a dagger that shoots gigantic massive glintstone projectiles to one-shot you. This fella knew what was going on, but he didn't tell his friend. Now we're in a very similar situation to before. This spot is kinda predestinated for this exact thing to happen, I guess. And again, if you pay attention to the guy, you can dodge this spell. It's not the hardest spell to dodge. And from this angle I can't even hit him with the glintstone priest. But well, he's coming over, and I'm just swapping to good old Darkmoon Greatsword. And giving him a little beating. Oh yeah. Even unbuffed, the R2 of this thing is not to be traded with mindlessly. Now the host is trying to come over and I'm in a much better spot this time. I'm trying to time it so that I hit him right in this moment when he lands after jumping from one branch to the other. It's not possible to dodge roll in this moment. He unfortunately dodges my second shot though, and so I'm using this opportunity to show off a very nice feature of this dagger, which is that you can cast its Ash of War and then fall off a ledge and still finish the cast. This is quite rare, a lot of animations get cancelled when you slide off an edge. In this clip we see a showdown between Moonveil and Darkmoon Greatsword, and the host is using a Bloodhound Fang. But usually those people with the Bloodhound Fangs aren't really the issue. Not saying that Bloodhound Fang is a bad weapon, but in general Bloodhound Fang is preferred by, let's say, newer players most of the time, because it's a very beginner-friendly weapon. And now we see a nice trade between the two arguably strongest mage weapons. If it comes to raw damage output, the Darkmoon Greatsword is vastly superior. And I'm using this chance to teach this guy a small lesson about his own weapon, which is that you should be very careful with this weapon art and when you use it. He also almost fell off. Next up I landed in a nice fight club of a guy I invaded quite a lot of times already. He's just always passively hiding somewhere and summoning blues and reds to fight each other, which is something that I sometimes enjoy. And so I'm fighting those blues. This blue was spamming some Carrion Slicer, but my weapon was more effective for the spam, this dagger. The next blue I'm using the Death Ritual Spear against, which is also one of the best mage weapons for sure. So you can just summon this large area denial kind of rain of spears, and you kind of force people to run away from it. There I'm again using the cast while falling, but somehow he manages to dodge it, don't ask me why. It looked very much like a hit. And then I'm perfectly timing the Death Ritual Spear weapon art into his weapon art because I just expected him to spam it. And he eats a couple of those spears, and after 2 more hits, one of which being a roll catch, he's done. Thank you very much for the Estus refill. Sometimes in those kind of fight clubs you also have this red versus red situation. And I wasn't sure if this guy wanted to fight me, so I kind of wanted to avoid it. I wanted to jump down because right next to this wall there was the host hiding on a pillar. But it seems like the guy wanted to fight me, so I was okay fighting him, obviously. It's not like I'm never fighting a red. If it's a Fight Club situation, of course it's legit. And this guy's using a pretty strong weapon, the Bloody Helis. It's a heavy thrusting sword that has an Ash of War that has a lot of iframes to it. And it also has some bleed buildup. That was the host, by the way. We just saw him for a second creeping up the elevator behind us. I'm swapping to the Halberd with Loretta's Slash, just because it's a very strong weapon art, and I'm trying to keep up with his range, because the heavy thrusting sword obviously has a lot of range. He's unsuccessfully trying to parry me there, twice. But I don't get to punish him with a backstab, unfortunately. So I'm using the Loretta Slash to finish him off. Next up we see a solo host in the Helic tree. Something that's extremely rare. He's not even summoning blues. He's an honest solo host, and he's also pretty good in my opinion. We're having a very nice little dance there. Our weapons are somewhat similar in speed, and so it's kind of a dance of who can kind of bring the other one to not dodge correctly. And it's pretty nice. We're doing this for a while. And then he makes a small mistake and I get the backstab and finish him. GG, mate. Next up is another duel against a solo host. This guy seems less experienced though, and he just barely avoids getting comboed to death. And so I'm kind of tricking him with this shot to believing I'm gonna spam some magic, and then instead I just jump attack him. And here we got a third solo host. This time I'm using the dual straight swords. One of which has the Gravitas Ash of War on it, which is a pretty cool one. It can pull enemies towards you, and the other one has the Piercing Fang, as you just saw. And I'm dealing almost lethal damage to this guy. He's one hit to death, and I expected those trumpet blowers to just finish him off. But they miss, and so I have to do it myself. GG. Alrighty, now it's time for some arena, or Colosseum as it's called in Elden Ring. And we immediately see why a lot of people hate mages, especially in the arena. The mage just immediately shoots his Swift Glintstone Shard, the fastest spell, at me while I'm still gesturing. And now he just uses his extreme latency. You saw how long my hit takes to hit him there. And he switches into extreme annoyance mode. He even starts teabagging me, look at that. So he knows that because he's having just absolute trash connection, he can get away with a lot of things while fast rolling. My hits will only ever register as hits if he's not in iframes on my or on his screen at the moment the hit goes through, which is almost never the case with extreme latency and fast rolls, which means having a weight under 30% of your weight limit. Abusing this mechanic to just never get hit is, in my opinion, extremely toxic. And they are Chinese, so they are very well aware of their bad connection towards the rest of the world, probably using a VPN and so on and so on. I made a different video on this topic called Elden Ping, maybe watch that if you're interested. So just to prove what I was saying earlier about people hating mages, I'm fighting this guy whose literal name is I Hate Magic. It's a little unfortunate that he ran into me because I'm also somewhat of a mage. But at least I'm not this kind of mage that is spamming projectiles all the time and running away. But I guess it wasn't really much better for him. In my opinion, a lot of mages are fun to fight though. By far not all of them are cancerous scumbags. Like this guy here, he's also a mage. And he's using some range magic, he's using some close combat magic. He's sometimes running away, but not all the time. So he's quite fun to fight in my opinion. Gary just used a spell called Terra Magica. It buffs your spell damage as long as you're in this circle on the ground. But it only counts for the person that casted it, so my damage was not improved by it. I'm for a second round against the same guy. He's nice, greeting me at the start. I'm just greeting him with a wiggle. And this time he's using the Frost Storm, which is also a really cool spell in my opinion. Now he's using some range magic, but followed up by some close combat magic. As I said, in my opinion, this guy, he's not spamming anything on range. He's fun to fight. GG. I wish I could say the same thing about my next opponent. This guy is tox maxing, as I like to say. He's maxing out his toxicity by being a light roll build who is using a sleep halberd. This halberd has a very high arcane scaling, and there is a weird interaction that if you put some status buildup inducing grease on it, since status buildup is generally increased by your arcane stat. For some reason, because this weapon has such a good arcane scaling, the status buildup is also dramatically increased, and therefore you get to sleep someone with a couple hits and combo into it, obviously. So he can end the fight with a few swings. But well, if your opponent already knows what you're about to do, they may use some countermeasures like wearing a talisman to boost their sleep immunity, for example. Or just be 10% more careful the next time so they don't get slept. Or maybe they will adjust to your lag and just hit you more often. And then maybe your lack of armor becomes your downfall. Also a mage with range options you can't really run away from. It's never good to be a one-trick pony. Don't be like this guy. Maybe you want to be more like this guy, who buffs at the beginning of the fight, then uses Endure on a rapier, spams his rapier a little, gets outspaced by the halberd, and pulls out a shield. And goes for the most high risk, high reward maneuver in the game, the parry. Except, I kinda know the ins and outs of parrying. And well, it's not that hard to outplay it, if you make it too predictable, that is. Maybe you wanna rather be like this guy, who uses double fists, definitely one of the strongest setups in this current meta game. I even made a video called The Claw Meta, where I explained the modern fist and claw setups and why they are so strong at the moment. Maybe you just wanna roll around for no particular reason. Maybe you just want to run into your opponent's attacks. Maybe at some point your opponent is going to swap to your setup and show you how to actually play it. But well, there's unlimited options for what could happen, right? It's also never good to underestimate your opponent. Sometimes you may just take your opponent down to one hit, and then they turn the fight around. Sometimes you may think that your opponent does not have a chance, and you're about to win the fight, but then they surprise you just when you think you figured them out and you even try to parry them. And then they hit you with a charge or two and almost take you out. And just a very risky outspacing maneuver saves you in the very last second. But then you fight the same guy again and you think, okay, this time I'm not gonna take a risk. This time I'm just gonna take him out safely. And then you barely take any damage and take them out. Sometimes you may see a setup and think, I already fought against this setup a million times. But maybe this time their combination of latency and just spamming the button harder than anyone you ever fought before may this time cost you the fight. But then maybe next time you fight the same guy, you just have the perfect answer to that. Because you already know what they're going to do if they're not mixing up their style. So maybe this time you are surprising them. Maybe this time you're going to outplay them completely. And again win with barely any health lost. And sometimes you might just fight someone who is more than one step ahead of you. Who uses all your tactics against you. Who just knows that you're going for the backstab and then backstabs you instead. All these things can happen in a game like Elden Ring. And very rarely, only very rarely, you will meet an opponent who is just better than you. And you just won't have any chance against him, no matter how you use your build. I mean, maybe you could change your build, But with this one, sorry, but it's not gonna happen. Maybe you fight them 4 times in a row. Maybe it only gets worse and worse and you only deal less and less damage to them. There's always a lesson to be learned. There's always an improvement to be made. And it's never too late to change your strategy. This is what the old saying from Dark Souls, "Hit good," really means. It means never give up. It means keep trying. It means invest your time and you will earn skill. There is no shortcut to that. Even though Elden Ring might make it seem like that sometimes. Alright everyone, that's it for today's video. It's sad, but all good things must pass, and it's not going to be the last video. This music you hear and you heard during the video is from another video game called Super Mario Galaxy. I very much hope you enjoyed the video. If so, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. That's it from me, Bastard out. See you next time and have a good one.